Alright folks, got a little update for you on my battle. Conflict of Heroes, Awakening the Bear. And as I mentioned in my previous video, the version I'm using is 2nd edition. And I've got a lot of comments and people asking me about 3rd edition. And I know about Storm of Steel, which is the Battle of Kursk in that era of the Eastern Front, which is going to be released sometime soon in the next few months, I hope. And that's basically the 3rd edition. What I didn't realize is that there is 3rd edition versions of Awakening the Bear. And that got me looking around the website. And sure enough, I found a PDF version on their website of the full 3rd edition rules for Awakening the Bear. And it's a system, so it's the same rules you'd find in Storm of Steel and all the other versions of the game, Guadalcanal, all that. And I downloaded it, and I got it, as well as the play sheets, the turn record chart, and the action points things here. I printed them out in full color. Here's the play sheet. It's double-sided. And I've yet to really look at it in depth, but this is the 3rd edition of Awakening the Bear. And everything in here is compatible with your contents of your 2nd edition version of Awakening the Bear. At least that's what I'm told by the designer. So if that's the case, yeah, I think I'm going to try this out. And for instance, the counters don't change. So it's the same values and all this other stuff that's on there now that is still in the 3rd edition of Awakening the Bear. And that sounds pretty good to me. And that said, there are some pretty major changes to the system. Let's see if I can cover that just a little. Like, for instance, if you look at these action point tables that each player would have for their side, and they're both exact. I have 2 of them, one for the Russians and one for the Germans. You'll notice right away there's no more action points. Action points in the system are gone. Replaced by this new system, which is a die roll to see if the unit becomes spent. When you take an action with a unit, it doesn't have a limit of action points anymore. You basically take your action, and based on the value, the number of action points that it costs to do that action, it gives you a % chance on a D10. Now, keep in mind, this is a very special D10. But it gives you a % chance that that unit will suddenly become spent when it is at the conclusion of its action that it takes. And of course, spent, if you're unfamiliar with the rules, means your counter is done for the round, and it's flipped to its spent side. You can't take any more actions with it. Well, instead of spending APs and doing so until you run out and then you become spent, now you take an action, and based on its action point cost, that will yield a % chance of becoming spent. Now, there's a special die that comes with 3rd edition. It's basically a 10-sided die. It has 2 1s, 2 3s, and I believe 2 5s. And that replaces the 8, 9, and 10 results on here. So you don't have an 8, 9, and 10. They're replaced with a 1, 3, and 5, I believe. And this little table here is basically for reference, really. If I take an action that is worth 2 AP, I would look at this table and say, okay, 2 AP, there's a 30% chance that I will become spent and basically done for the round. And I'd be flipped. And I was looking at the values on here. Because there's 2 1s and a single 2, that's 3 sides of a 10-sided die. And with each side on a 10-sided die equaling 10%, 10 times 3 is, you guessed it, 30%. So even though there is a special 10-sided die that comes with the 3rd edition of these games, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use a D10 and leave it as it is. So if it's a 30% chance for a 2 action, I'll roll this, and if it's up to 30, well, then I'm spent. Of course, I think I have to count the 0 as a 10 in this case, not as a 0. So 1, 2, and 3 would be 30%. Yeah, but anyway, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to use a die for this, just a 10-sided dice. It'll do for now because I don't have the appropriate die. The sides aren't what they're supposed to be with the official die, but this should work just as well for the time being. In addition, there's command action points still, and they refresh at the end of the round as always, and you start with so many and you spend them to do things, and you can use them to modify your attack rolls and stuff just like you always did. One of the differences, you can use as many caps as you want to take actions, to modify these rolls, for instance. I believe, I haven't read the rules, I've just been watching a video by the designer talking about the changes, well as going through the rules, just light reading, not really getting in depth with it. So what I'm going to do, because I downloaded all this stuff and I have it saved on my hard drive, I'm going to pick up on turn 3 with this scenario, which is the first scenario from Awakening the Bear. And from this point on, I'm going to attempt to use 3rd edition rules. Just the basic rules you need to play the first scenario, of course. But I'm going to use the 3rd edition, so maybe you guys will get an idea of how this new 3rd edition works watching me go through this. So this will be a new experience for me. I'm actually kind of excited. New system, and it sounds awesome. Another thing about how these units activate now and take actions, because it's a % chance of becoming spent, you no longer have to activate a specific unit for the round and spend all of his 7 or so action points before he's spent. That's all gone. So basically, you're able to take an action with a unit, and then after your opponent takes an action with one of his units, it comes back to you. You can take an action with any other unit you want, or the same unit of your choice, and that's how it goes. So in other words, you've got a battle that's more entire battle. And there's a lot going on anywhere that you so choose. So you can focus your attention where you want on the battlefield, instead of being restricted to that one unit that you activate and have to spend all of his APs before he's spent, and you can go on to another unit. Of course, in 2nd edition, there's special rules that allow you to jump to other units while this other unit is activated. But that's all gone in 3rd edition. And I think it's going to make a more interesting, fluid battle, and chancy and unpredictable in many ways, because you don't know if a unit's going to be spent anymore. You know, that's interesting to me. So you're going to see that play out in the game. And again, I don't know how well this D10 and the % system will work, because they do actually have a special die for this, as I pointed out. But that's okay. I think this will work fine for the time being, and just to get an idea how the game works. And you know what? If I like this, I'll go ahead and I'll buy that Storm of Steel in the future as well. Something I haven't thought about in quite a while, although I've always wanted to get it. I've been waiting for it to come out for years now, and finally it's supposed to be released soon. But anyway, yeah, that's what we're going to do. And yeah, and one thing I didn't point out in the previous video, I just want to mention it here, is that each unit, when it's your turn, you pick a unit, you take an action, only one action, and once you're completed that one action, it goes to the opponent, and he does the same thing. So it's constantly going back and forth as players are taking a single action with their units. Sometimes a single action could be a group of units taking a single action together. You can do that. But normally it's, I take an action, then it goes to the German, he takes an action, then it comes back to me, I take an action, and it goes back and forth like this. It's called turns. And once a unit is spent, it's flipped. It can't take any more actions in that round. So yeah, that's what I'm up to. That's what's going on. 3rd edition, folks. What do you think? Leave me some comments about this. I'm quite pleasantly surprised to see this 3rd edition available. I'll put a link in the description to the website where you can access the PDF rules for 3rd edition. So if you have 2nd edition, rest assured, you're pretty much going to be able to use the entire contents of your game with the 3rd edition rules, which you can get for free currently. And just go to their website and check it out, download it, read through it, print out some of the record sheets, play sheets, and you're good to go. Yeah, should be pretty fun. Now that said, I'm not positive about the cards. If this game does use cards, and it's a really fun part of the game. They're talked about in the rules. I haven't really read about them, but I believe, based on what I hear, that you can still use those cards in their entirety with, even though they're from 2nd edition, you should be able to use them in your 3rd edition games. I really don't know what changes to the cards there are. I'm going to look into that tonight when I read up on some of the rules and report back to you guys. So there you go, folks. It looks pretty good so far, this 3rd edition of Awakening the Bear. I just wanted to give you guys an update and one last look before I'm out of here. Right where we left off in the last video, really. We'll see what happens. Okay, folks, stay tuned, like, share, subscribe, all that madness. And as always, folks, hang in there. It's only going to get better. You guys take care.